So now we'll move over to getting a report from the Europe Hub. This will be coming from Amina Feliak. She is the program coordinator of the Youth for Peace and Religions for Peace International Youth Committee in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Amina?
Thank you very much, Leilani. Good afternoon and greetings from Bosnia and Herzegovina to all of you. I have this honor and this duty to report what we discussed in the European Hub. I will start with reporting about the historical values and historical approach and this contribution of the FBOs to environment and protecting our Mother Earth. So what was actually emphasized at the beginning is that the protecting sacred natural sites was done for centuries by the FBOs and faith groups, sometimes even consciously, and that was done and inspired others to do the same. Also, it was emphasized that there is a deep sense of connectedness with nature and a holistic understanding of the role nature plays in our lives, which is inherent to the faith communities and people of faith. Also, during the history, faiths sometimes were also a part of the problem. For example, separation between the soul and body, nature and culture and people, which is actually improving a lot in the world that we live in today, and which we are basically showing with a lot of conferences and what we are doing today. What was also historical contribution of the FBOs and faith communities is that they actually contributed a lot to the climate justice, because contribution of faith communities was very important to reach out to those who don't want to change, to make them think about their values and rethink them and actually understand what is a climate justice, and that we actually live in a world that climate changes are really, really reality, and they are not something what is made up. Also, what was emphasized is that we need to look at our scriptures and act as stewards. We need to transform what is theologically set into practices, and that is being done by the faith communities and by the faith-based organizations. Also, it's important to emphasize that faith-based organizations are some of the first development organizations that are present in the local rural communities on a long-term basis, and they are there to support and to serve communities. Another point what was emphasized is that we need to develop a spiritual relationship with nature instead of just using the nature, and that's something done by the faith-based organizations again. And multi-stakeholder partnership is important. So faith-based organizations and communities need to work with the politics, with the science, with the arts, with the civil society, with the NGOs, with the governments, in order to establish and to, let's say, implement a common ecological vision. When we speak about the concrete actions and how faith can mobilize action, then we can say that individual communities are taking action on the spot, and there needs to be joint efforts as well on a bigger scale. Sometimes it's difficult to find out which communities are doing some work, because communities are often very modest and they are not speaking about what they are doing. So it's important to map them. It's important to bring their work to the higher levels and the bigger scale. Another vital component bringing together is conservation groups and religious leaders, and establishing a dialogue, because religious leaders can come up with their solutions. For example, what's given with the fatwas, for example, the fatwas for the rainforest in Indonesia. Cooperation of religious communities and businesses is one of very important examples we could hear about. On reducing plastic waste, there were developed materials and tools how religious communities and businesses together can actually work on reducing plastic waste. It is also important to approach the problem taking into account the local context, because communities and inclusion are key words. It's important to take into account this local context, because you cannot take one very good action and put it just into another place. We have to take into account local context. Also, intergenerational approach is very much emphasized. Young people working together with the seniors. Young people dialoguing with the seniors. And also interreligious approach is very much appreciated, because those are the joint efforts, and we will show how each of the faith communities, each of the faith traditions is actually deeply connected to the nature, and only together we can bring some viable and tangible changes. Religion also can aid science in finding what is possible, what is not so possible to discover by scientific methods alone. So there is this element of unity. And faith-based organizations have raised a lot of questions and developed plans in how to achieve sustainability regionally and globally. So it seems that it may be difficult to complete all the SDGs, but the role of FBOs is to show to the leaders that changing our behavior is the way forward to achieving the goals. So there is the link to this interreligious approach again. So faith-based organization also are having cohesive messages is important. So more faith-based people are wanting answers and to be part of the change. And this is the powerhouse of the FBOs. We also had some important examples of renewable energy projects in India, mainly solar panels, then wind power projects, planting of trees, very active in providing food and build organic gardens are actually everything what's connected with the FBOs. And building partnerships with the FBOs and environmental organizations, capacity building, conferences and sessions, it's really important. Language is also important, how we speak about nature, the value of using religious language about the nature, it's the way how we can approach people. When we speak about what is different for the faith-based organizations in regards to the governments, to the other organizations, to the businesses, then we say that faith is a way of life and action springs from this. Language is important, as I said again. Faith-based organizations have a lot of volunteers who are motivated from their hearts. So they are not working for the money, they are not working for some material resources. And most importantly, faith brings hope to people. And we could see this during the COVID-19 because it was emphasized that mostly faith-based organizations and faith communities actually somehow reacted much better than the governments or other organizations because they were able to bring hope to the people and they were able to make people work together and actually cope with the COVID-19 crisis. Also, religious traditions are transnational. They are not only nationally based, but they can reach people in different parts of the world and bring their messages there. Also, it is important to say that engagement with the FBOs leads to inclusivity. Ethics are inherent to FBOs, so having an ethical approach is central to FBOs, but it is also important to promote this ethics to a wider audience. The use of stories, the use of narratives is really important and very effective in leading to practical action. FBOs also hold a sense of belonging to a community. It's a shared meaning of belonging and it's a togetherness. So it's the emphasis is on togetherness, on a common work, on a joint work. And also it's important to have respect for other people's faiths, how we are open to other forms of faith and spirituality. So seeking a common language is an imperative. And how faith-based organizations and faith-based actions can actually contribute to the 2030 agenda. Here, the role of youth is also emphasized because youth are taking the SDGs and they are raising awareness about it among their communities and how different elements of the SDGs are evident in our daily lives. This links the core values to main faith traditions. It is important also from the institutional perspective, as institutions change their contributions to the agenda changes, but values are also important as it reflects the change within ourselves in order to then change the wider systems. It's important to start from ourselves, to make change in ourselves, and then we can ask other people to change. And there is also important need to close the gap between information and action, so values and ethics can play a role in this. Also, it's important to discuss the 2030 agenda. It's important to educate people about 2030 agenda and about the SDGs, and it's important to speak with the people in the language that they actually understand. And also values are solidarity, there are love, there is deep spiritual power sustaining it. So respect for the nature, human beings and the self. Supporting the dignity is one of the values of the FBOs. Simplicity as a rule towards consuming. Also, a non-violent approach is very important. Spiritual education, which is an education that makes people to think and rethink their values. And it's really also important to have this resilience within the communities to face all the challenges that we are facing today, and especially in the light of the COVID-19 crisis that is unfortunately still happening to us. And somebody emphasized it with Europe, actually, that COVID-19 might become COVID-20, COVID-2021, and we need to be able to cope with that, and we need to build strong and resilient communities. And that's everything from the European Hub. Thank you very much for listening, and